and Eric Davis. Eric Weinstein's this former colleague of mine who's a physicist, and then Eric Davis is this other guy in UFO world who focuses on exotic propulsion. Weinstein said that he was kind of exasperated. He was like, why are there no theoretical physicists on the program? But you talk about theoretical physicists on site at S4.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I think they were exhausted by him. And I think they kept going over that road and never got anywhere.
Interesting.
And they were looking for let's just do something out of left field and see what we come up with. So, no, I don't know. Again, that's what made me think this isn't gravity at all. This is a new force entirely.
Yeah. And you know what I found interesting too is you said bismuth seemed to have come up. Like that was something.
There is something about bismuth.
You might be starting to notice a through line starting to emerge in this conversation, and it keeps leading back to the same place. To put it bluntly, Bob's work at S4 looks a whole lot like all of the documented knowledge we have on anti-gravity experiments done in the last 100 years. Now again, these claims don't lie in the realm of conventional proven science, but while there's no proverbial fire, there is a whole lot of smoke around them. I'm talking not only of the experiments of Townsend Brown, but of Eugene Pokletnov, Ning Li, and others. And one single element might tie all of these stories together. Bismuth. There's a reason why Bob Lazar kept hearing about it at S4. Here's why bismuth matters. We'll break down the science as clearly as we can. It starts with something called a K factor. A K factor, or dielectric constant, is simply a material's ability to store and discharge electric fields. Now, this has important implications for historical anti-gravity experiments. You see, the higher the K factor, the more thrust or propulsion you see in Townsend Brown's capacitor experiments. Brown spent his career searching for high K materials that could amplify the effect he'd discovered. Bismuth is one of them, and it's often mentioned in the context of his anti-gravity work. There's even an interview from this guy, Lewis Witten, who's at RIAS, which is Martin Corporation, pre-Lockheed merger, their anti-gravity outfit, where they were studying sort of the most exotic propulsion modalities. And he says in this interview with the American Institute of Physics, there's a guy named Townsend who claimed to have an isotope of bismuth that repelled instead of attracted. Material that works well for historical anti-gravity experiments comes up in the UFO reverse engineering program. Go figure. But it gets weirder. Bismuth and element 115, moscovium, share the same number of valence electrons. Valence electrons are the electrons in the outermost shell of an atom, the ones that determine how an element bonds, reacts, and behaves chemically. Bismuth has 5. Moscovium, or element 115, has 5. They sit in the same column of the periodic table, group 15, which means they have essentially the same chemical personality, the same bonding geometry, the same family of crystal structures, the same tendency to form the layered compounds that produce the most exotic quantum behavior known to material science. Lazar described element 115 as the fuel source for the craft's propulsion system. Mind you, this was in 1989, before element 115 had ever been synthesized or named. When it finally was synthesized in 2003, it turned out to be a pnictogen, a group 15 element, the same chemical family as bismuth. And bismuth is basically the most electromagnetically bizarre stable element on Earth. That's either the most chemically literate lucky guess in history, or it isn't a guess at all. Now here's where the science gets genuinely strange. Bismuth is one of the most unusual elements on the periodic table. Most high K materials are passive. They sit there, holding charge, and do nothing else. Bismuth is different. It fights back. Expose bismuth to a magnetic field, and instead of being attracted the way iron pushes towards a magnet, it pushes away. This property is called diamagnetism, and bismuth has more of it than any other stable element on Earth. Not slightly more, dramatically, anomalously, inexplicably more. The reason lives inside the atom itself. Every electron does two things simultaneously. It orbits the nucleus like a planet around a star, and it spins on its own axis like a tiny top. In lighter elements, these two motions barely register each other, but bismuth sits near the bottom of the periodic table at element 83, one of the heaviest stable elements that exists. And in super heavy elements, something extraordinary happens. The electrons in the outer shell move so fast that they enter what physicists call the relativistic regime. They're traveling at a meaningful fraction of the speed of light, and when something moves that fast, the universe starts playing by different rules. At those speeds, Einstein's physics takes over from Newton's. One consequence is that these screaming, hurling outer electrons generate a powerful magnetic field just from their own motion, and that magnetic field slams into their own spin. This is a process called spin-orbit coupling, and in bismuth, it's ferociously strong, so strong that bismuth's electrons become, in a sense, magnetically self-aware, generating an opposing field in response to anything applied to them from the outside. So that's why bismuth has anomalous diamagnetism. The electrons aren't just passive, they're pushing back.
The most amazing thing is leaning into it, putting all your force on that. Nothing moves at all. And when the reactor's off, you can easily slide it.
This also makes bismuth a natural topological dopant, meaning when you introduce it into certain crystalline materials, it induces what physicists call topologically protected quantum states. These are electron states so geometrically locked into the structure of the material that they can't be destroyed by disorder or impurities. They are, in a very real sense, protected by the shape of reality itself. Element 115, with the same 5 outer electrons as bismuth, would have dramatically stronger relativistic effects, and it would theoretically be an even more powerful topological dopant, best hosted, physicists predict, in chalcogenide crystal structures, which happen to be the exact crystal family that bismuth-based topological insulators already prefer. Same column, same electrons, the dial just turned up to a level we've never engineered. Okay, I know what you're thinking. How do you get from this exotic chemistry jargon to UFO propulsion, or a force that bends space-time? Well, here's where the chemistry ends, and something bigger begins. In Einstein's general relativity, energy and momentum in all forms, including the energy stored in fast-spinning relativistic electrons, technically curves space-time. Every electron is, in the most literal physical sense, warping the fabric of the universe around it. Now, for ordinary matter, this effect is so incomprehensibly tiny, it effectively doesn't exist. But a small group of serious physicists began asking dangerous questions in the 1990s. What if, instead of spinning randomly in all directions, their gravitational effects canceling each other into noise, you could align them into a single coherent state, all pointing in the same direction, all pushing together? This was the life's work of Dr. Ning Li, a physicist who dared to dabble in anti-gravity. More specifically, she worked in gravitomagnetic theory. Li was a woman who eventually left her position at the University of Alabama Huntsville to work full-time at Redstone Arsenal on research so sensitive it effectively vanished from public view. And the chair of her department at University of Alabama Huntsville, Larry Smalley, was so high conviction in her work that he left with her. Before she died, Li proposed that in superconductors, materials where electrons surrender their individual identities and merge into a collective quantum state, the gravitomagnetic effect of those electrons, normally washed away by thermal chaos, would suddenly snap into alignment. They'd become coherent, directional. She was trying to build a gravity engine in a laboratory. Let's compare that with Bob Lazar's work on UFOs in the 80s. Years before Ning Li's work ever became public, Lazar described 3 cylindrical emitters at the base of a craft. The emitters at the base of Lazar's craft didn't produce thrust in the traditional sense. They didn't push against air or expel mass. They generated a directed alteration of the gravitational field itself that the craft would then just fall into. Not propulsion, geometry. The craft didn't move through space. It literally bent space, and space carried it. That description, organized field-generating devices producing a directional gravitational effect by aligning and focusing a force that normally cancels itself to zero, is structurally, almost precisely, what Ning Li was theorizing in a laboratory thousands of miles away, using completely different source material, arriving at exactly the same place years later.
When the craft is in operation, there is a high voltage detectable on the skin of the craft.
And then there's the hull of the craft. Lazar said that he believed the craft's hull material was an electret, basically a material that permanently stores an electric field, the electrical equivalent of a permanent magnet.
I think the material the craft is made from is an electric. And so it always, just like a magnet always has a magnetic field to it, an electric always has an electrostatic field to it.
Interesting.
And I think that's certainly something important.
Again, bismuth titanate is one of the finest electret materials known, used in high-temperature sensor applications precisely because of its stability. Now, if you were designing a hull material for a craft that needed to interact with gravity wave emitters, maintain a permanent electric field, and respond to both electric and magnetic stimuli simultaneously, the material that checks every single box is bismuth ferrite. That's right, again with the bismuth. It's a material that is simultaneously ferroelectric and magnetic, where the two properties talk to each other, where you can control one with the other. No other readily available material sits at the intersection of diamagnetism, topological insulator behavior, high K dielectrics, electret properties, and multiferroic coupling simultaneously. But bismuth does. And a theoretical stable version of element 115 might do all of those things on steroids. Bismuth sits right at the edge of where relativistic electron behavior begins to dominate everything. By the time you get to Moscovium, you might have full-fledged space-time engineering. And then what's really interesting is Gary Nolan has this magnesium bismuth piece in his lab at Stanford. You'd need some sort of motive to, in certain cases, heavier elements create isotope ratios that you just don't find on Earth. It doesn't make any sense. And then it also, the thing was found alongside an observed anomaly in the sky in a crash, and it was in the 50s or 60s. One of which was literally a beach in Brazil, Ubatuba. And the similarity between Brown and Bueller's anti-gravity and Lazar's sports model don't stop there. Brown would use DC pulsing and kind of high climb rates of the voltage, so that the voltage there'd be a steep climb rate where it would, increase very, very sharply. The microsizing waveguides for terahertz, you could have very high frequency, energy going into the craft.
Yeah, there's something about bismuth, I think, that's that's undiscovered.
Yes.
And so much that we're unable to do because it's at the limit, of our technology.
Bismuth at S4. Bismuth in Townsend Brown's experiments. Bismuth's properties in Ning Li's gravitomagnetic theory. Bismuth as an ideal hull material for a UFO exactly like the one Lazar described. Bismuth in the UFO samples that Stanford professor Gary Nolan is analyzing right now.
The preponderance of evidence now, and the Department of Defense admitting that these things are real, that the data is real. Not what there's no conclusions.
Yeah.
The data is real.